let's zoom in on the fast phobia cure. So the fast phobia cure is basically, as the name says, a pattern to relieve a person of a phobia or of a fear in a fast way. So the whole idea here is to, through the process of the pattern, to create a relief or to change the perception of the person for this fear. Let's take one of the typical fears, like for instance, fear of spiders. A person sees a spider, experiences fear, gets the reaction from that, like for instance, not being able to decide or wanting to run away or whatever kind of reaction. And with the fast phobia cure, you have, as a client, you put the fear on a screen of a cinema, and then through certain steps, you move back in the cinema while watching the movie. Once you finish watching the movie, you jump into the film, you change colors, you make it go backwards. And when it's at the beginning, before the fear starts, you jump out again and everything goes from the top. So basically, that's just a very short summary of the fast phobia. Like, there are a couple of extras in there.
Hi there, welcome to the replay of our after hours discussions with professional coaches. Your exclusive complimentary Sunday session for all of our community around the world, where coaching minds unite with our people to create real world results. I am Adrian Cahill, your host and founder of the Motivate community, and more recently, Monday Morning Motivation. As a global trainer in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, coaching, and hypnosis, this weekly gathering brings some of my colleagues from trainings, my fellow students and coaches all together in one place where we can discuss, share, help change the world by delivering free, quality information that's here to help you transform.
And good morning, good evening, and wherever the sun is relative to you, have a lovely day. My name is Philipp Efenberger. I'm from Austria. I'm living in lovely Vienna, but I'm not just here. I do move a lot through the city, through the country, through the world, because I am very much interested in culture, cultural differences, well, also the kind of how people communicate with each other. And this was my original trajectory, how I left IT and entered the training space as a trainer in 2012. In the initial years, it was more knowledge transfer and training-ish. But then after a couple of educations, I went full throttle into training people in communication, personality development, and rather soon also in neuro-linguistic programming. Another couple years down the line, I discovered my love for coaching, specifically when I was very happy with the training stuff. And it's like, the 1,000 hours that you put into something to become an expert. So I put about 15,000 hours into becoming a trainer. And then I just noticed, what the heck, I just missed becoming something new or adding another level of complexity and another challenge. So this is where my coaching background began. And luckily, since coaching is so incredibly individual, I always have a new challenge with a new client, it stays still super interesting. And this is already for 8 years, so I'm way past those hours. So that's basically my becoming as a coach. As a coach, I do like to blend a lot of stuff. So things that I love a lot is action-oriented coaching, short time period coaching, because basically the shorter I coach a client and the faster I can help them, the better it's for them. It's worse from a money point of view, but then again, if somebody is happy, this person will recommend me. So it's a win-win. It's just a win-win with a little bit of a time play. So this is something what I can already recommend. And the way how I do prefer coaching is direct and from a cultural point of view, with a taste for the specifics that a person brings in. So, for instance, I have been for the major part of my coaching career so far, been working with people in life coaching and in crisis intervention. So when somebody has a crash on the highway and loses an arm, and well, the life is slightly changed afterwards. This is something where I would work with the person. But also because of my military background, I have a strong leadership background, which is why I at some point pivoted into leadership coaching, where I work with people who mostly don't work at the work that they are working in, but they work at the decisions that are necessary for the work. Well, it's a completely different kind of coaching because you don't coach the person in front of you, but also the persons that person is working with. So there is a very interesting amplification perspective on that. The coachee in front of you is not just one person, but amplifies your coaching towards other people. And this is something where I continued. Now I'm discovering executive transitional coaching. So basically, first time executives or executives changing the branch into a different one or becoming CEO. This is the kind of persons I'm working with right now. So I have quite a funny connection, funny combination of people because I do like working with people in education still. It's like kind of giving knowledge to the younger generation, under quotes, so to say. But like the most important thing about coaching for me is that it is a never-ending process of learning. A never-ending process of learning. You can always learn something from the person in front of you. You can always learn something about yourself while you work with the person, and you can always learn something before and afterwards as well. When you prepare and when you read the NLP format for the swish pattern or for the fast phobia cure or whatnot, and you read it for the 50th time just to be sure, just to be prepared, and then you just wait a minute. So actually, if I take the fast phobia cure and I just switch the visual cues with kinesthetic cues, then I don't need visual cues anymore. Cool. I gain more flexibility just because of a flick of a thought. And this is something I love about this job, and I love about working with the people, because basically it is developing my mindset, and while coaching other people, I can develop theirs in career, in business, but also in private life. Fun fact, my most recent coachee, during our coaching, she broke up with her husband. Yay! You know, this is a different experience when at the end of the coaching, the person says, okay, I'm going to quit the relationship. Wait, what? What? But the interesting thing is, all the following sessions, she came in with a drive and with an energy and with a sense of freedom. It was incredible. So even if one thing ended, it helped her continue on her own path to reach her own points. I heard a noise in the background. Any questions? Shoot. I don't know the questions. Yeah, Karina?
My question is, can you tell me more about kinesthetic cues? When you say you coach with kinesthetic cues, can you tell us more about that? What do you mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So, are you familiar with the fast phobia cure?
Yes.
Very good, very good. I would like to extend the question just to already go into the training a bit further. So, who of you, just hands up or thumb up in the reaction bar? Who of you knows the fast phobia cure? Okay, I see 2 hands up, and Karina said she knows it. Okay, I assume Darko knows as well. How about the swish pattern? Who of you knows the swish pattern? Swish. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And how about let's go for something else. How about the visual squash? Visual squash. Yes, you know, okay. Okay. A couple of people. So not everybody knows all the patterns, but that's fine. That's not the point here. Let's zoom in on the fast phobia cure. So the fast phobia cure is basically, as the name says, a pattern to relieve a person of a phobia or of a fear in a fast way. So the whole idea here is to, through the process of the pattern, to create a relief or to change the perception of the person for this fear. Let's take one of the typical fears, like for instance, fear of spiders. A person sees a spider, experiences fear, gets the reaction from that, like for instance, not being able to decide or wanting to run away or whatever kind of reaction. And with the fast phobia cure, you have, just in a very short way, you have, as a client, you put the fear on a screen of a cinema. And then through certain steps, you move back in the cinema while watching the movie. Once you finish watching the movie, you jump into the film, you change colors, you make it go backwards. And when it's at the beginning, before the fear starts, you jump out again and everything goes from the top. So basically, that's just a very short way of a very short summary of the fast phobia. Like, there are a couple of extras in there. Who of you would think in this way to get rid of a fear by yourself? Who of you would use this kind of style to get rid of a fear? Who of you would think of the cinema to lose the fear of whatever? So Jay is shaking his head. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify. We don't use the cinema, but we use a life regression to back to where there's and to actually reframe as well. So there's a very similarity, but for me, I don't use it a lot. I don't get much opportunity, but it's the same, is getting to the feeling of being good before this comes in and finding that point. So that same process we use quite often. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Daco, did you want to say something?
Yes, you ask who would use fast phobia for healing.
No. Not who would use fast phobia. Who would use the thought of a cinema to get rid of a fear?
Yes, I want to share that I'm using this exercise with cinema, not necessarily always with fear, but for different situations to make a change.
Okay.
So I'm using this exercise. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. So then what would be the difference in using the fast phobia for you and the reframing? Because I do a lot of reframing sessions as Jay. So because at the end we basically have the same result. We want to know, for the person to know the triggers before they explode, before they snap. So it becomes not, what's the difference between the two?
Let's take a step back here, because I don't want you to think in terms of what's the process of the pattern. What is the pattern? I would like you more to think of in terms of what makes the pattern work. What makes the pattern work? And the central ingredient in the fast phobia cure is jumping in and out of the movie. So associating and dissociating. And once you understand this, for all the patterns, what makes a pattern efficient, you can switch the patterns as you like. You can use a just like Jay described. You can use a lighthouse to move on a ship and move further away from the fear, or whatever. You can make a cosmic travel that it gets distance between the fear and the client. It doesn't really matter, because you understand that association and dissociation makes it work. With the same logic, and now comes the kinesthetic triggers. With the same logic, you can just say, okay, the person in front of me doesn't get visuals very strongly because the person is much more kinesthetically aligned. So, okay, let's use the feeling that the person feels right before the fear starts. Where is this feeling in your body? Okay, so it's here. Good. What happens when you experience the situation? Well, then the fear becomes super heavy and it draws me down and it starts turning at my legs. Okay, how about we turn this dragging down feeling just in the other way around, and instead of letting it drag down, you put a small little rocket on it, and the feeling goes up while it turns in the other way. So that's how you use the kinesthetic cue that the person experiences, just the other way around.
Okay. So
That's the easy answer in NLP.
Yes.
But we're not talking about NLP, of course, right?
No.
We're talking about blending it with ICF. So here we have some problems, because all the adventureness that we have in NLP, all the easiness and the flexibility and all this content imposition, like a cinema or an astronomic journey or experiencing your feelings inside of your body, this is all content imposition, which is something that the gold standard of NLP, of ICF, does not like at all, because ICF really doesn't like content imposition. And now I'm switching to my ICF cup. Let me have a sip.
Mm-hmm.
ICF is very, very strong in giving great definitions of the core skills and of the ethical work that they have. Let me show. So I assume most of you are familiar with this lovely page. No, not this one. This one.
Mm-hmm.
ICF Coaching Federation. Awesome. Well, if you would like to get to know something about ICF, there's a lot of information here, obviously. But I would like to zoom in on these 2 points, the coaching ethics and the coaching competencies. And let's start with the coaching competencies. When I look at the coaching competencies, and I already opened the PDF here, there are 7 pages that describe the gold standard of coaching. So there are different organizations that define what is good coaching, like the EMCC for the European coaching, or the ACC for the Austrian coaching. Yes, Austria has its own coaching association. It's very funny. But then there again, the EMCC and the ICF are pretty much the largest ones. Well, I think the ICF has about 60,000 members and the EMCC has 50,000, or something roundabout like that. So this core competencies, and for that matter, also the second part, which is the code of ethics, are the 2 most important documents if you would like to become ICF certified. And the code of ethics describes in a more or less complete way what ethics are from a perspective of ICF, while the core competencies, which are, by the way, the updated ones from 2019, they describe 8 little things, like, for instance, here, demonstrating ethical practice, or embodies a coaching mindset, or in general, a couple of points that describe co-creating the relationship. And with co-creating the relationship, I would like to zoom in even further with, for instance, this point here. So point 3.6. And I don't want to bore you too much with this document. It's just, I would like you to give a couple of examples. You can look it up by yourself, but basically this document describes what ICF likes and what it doesn't like. And if you partner with your clients, in the coaching conversation to identify and reconfirm what they want to accomplish in the session, there is no space for a freaking cinema. There is no space for a freaking astral journey or whatever, because this is nothing that you can propose from ICF point of view. However, and this is why the co-creating part is so interesting, if the client comes up with this part, and if the client says, hey, I would like to do this in a different way, can you guide me through the process? And then I suggest, okay, so let's go for a cinema. Mm-hmm. The ICF assessor says, error, mistake, wrong, because I'm still imposing my content on the client. But if you really and truly want to stay out of content imposition in the way how ICF suggests it, then you really have to co-create each and every part of the metaphor of the pattern that you use. You have to co-create each and every part of the pattern that you use. Let's take the swish. The swish by itself, the usual description is you create a picture of the unwanted behavior. You create another picture of an alternative, preferred, better picture, and then you shoot away the unwanted picture, and the wanted picture is coming in your face, basically. And if you want, you can also do it with a kinesthetic cue while, pushing some air over the face of the person, so the person feels air coming over the face, and thus having the impression that the picture really hits hard with the new pattern, with the new behavior, is a bit stronger. Okay. Can do, is good for coaching, works very well. However, ICF does have its problem with it because, again, how do you shoot a picture? Doesn't make sense. So, for instance, if I would like to be ICF compatible, I really stress out not to go into content imposition from myself. And if for some reason I really have to use a specific process, e.g., a pattern or something that is predefined by NLP, I suggest it first, then I explain it second, and only in the third step I ask if we can do it after the client confirms, okay, that's a good thing, let's go. Usually the confirmation is always there, so that's easy. But even then, it might be a bit more tricky because it's a pattern from a different coaching style. And mind you, if you read the core competencies, and especially if you read the code of ethics from ICF, you will notice that ICF is much more on the conversational coaching side than anything else. So they really stress out the way that through communication, through talking about it, you can understand yourself and the situation better. All right. Was a bit of a longer answer, but Karina, good?
Yes.
Awesome.
When I did the practitioner class with Adrian, I loved the part with ACF because it was simple questions. And the way Adrian had explained it, he said, if someone walks by, they'll never guess you're having a coaching session. It's so conversational, you know? So yeah.
But if you want to play it safe for your credentialing, go for conversational coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest, if you have a new client, take the first hour, like the very first coaching session, because it's easy. You have the whole coaching agreement, you have the whole discovery of the coaching topic. That's a good session to hand in as a coaching call for the credentialing. If you have an experienced client who you already worked with a long time, you can create this pre-frame that today we are going to dive into the whole thing without any bells and whistles. We will stay on topic, and we will see how we can combine the flexible side of NLP with the gold standard of ICF while blending it together, African style. And that's also my 3 cups of coffee today. So I'm literally blending. I'm blending my NLP cup with Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, if you know the game. I have the gold standard, the Lion King, but also an African style, which is one of my favorite cups, which combines both of them and brings some color in there. So, blending is what helps you to be more effective. If you're done with the credentialing, then you can, of course, use the most efficient tool that the person needs right now. Yeah, as it's always like that. Jay, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, something came to mind with, I don't do a lot of coaching professionally or paid service these days. But I have a guy who is in a management job in government who I've been talking with a little, off and on. And he asked me something the other day. He said to me, the moment I walk across the car park and to the office door sort of thing, he said, I start feeling anxiety. And he said to me, is that something that you could probably help with? And I said, well, my reply to him was, I can help you with whatever you decide you need help with. And I kept it at that level. But the ICF process, just talking, he's described a situation, and I'm wondering how you would handle that, because it so easily transgresses into the NLP type process rather than the ICF. So just a little guidance on how you would stay within the ICF in that circumstance when someone specifically asks about something which is emotionally based.
Mm-hmm. Is this for you emotionally based?
No, it's not for me. No.
But the question, is it for you emotionally relevant to get some more peace and quiet? Just checking.
Yeah, it is a point with the ICF, because I never continued with it because I found it too restrictive. So perhaps there is something within me that reason has came to mind again, because I get in a bit of confusion because this guy's in the government and was associated with me previously. I'm a bit reluctant to actually do any coaching with him.
Would you like to make a demo with me?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, good. So that was already the first question from an ICF standpoint. Contracting with a client, asking for permission. Actually, not permission. It's more like asking for commitment. And in this case, my first question would be, when you say he's from government and you rather not work with him too much, what's the metaphor behind not doing that?
My distrust within me of anything to do with government these days that's developed.
Okay, so distrust. Wow. And what does distrust connect with this person specifically?
The association, I would think, for me, the association with if he talks to somebody and mentions what I'm doing, I feel a little bit of apprehension of my name being mentioned in any circles of the government these days.
That sounds to me like you are doing the coaching next to to your own work, which seems to be also governmentally related somewhat, but you would like to keep it separate. Can I say that like that? Okay, so I get it correctly. Good. Okay. What would be the worst possible thing that could happen?
I think it's my credibility across some government areas, departments.
Okay, so you mentioned trust at the beginning, trust towards what he says to his superiors or peers. You say your credibility within your area of work. What would happen if you would announce it by yourself? Like if you actively would say, "Hey guys, I'm coaching." While you think, I would like to make a meta comment.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I work. This is in a technical area that I work in, right? And the guy's in a separate section, which is more HR type based, resource side of things, but it's in the same department. And I don't know why, but I feel that it would inhibit. Here's a belief. I believe that if I want to do more work in that department, then keeping less knowledge about what I'm doing, somebody across that department, it's a belief of me, is better. Because I have seen previously how one person in one department talking to another person stopped me getting a job.
I see. I would like to make a short 10-second break from the coaching and make a meta comment, because this is a very beautiful situation for NLP style. What would happen if you would announce it, which is a content imposition from me, and ICF style, only asking questions coming from the client. So I would like here to make you really aware where I introduced content, whereas all the other questions were only focused on Jay. But let's continue, because this is a conundrum always. If the client has if you feel that there is a good question for the client and you put the question out there, and now something came up, something very interesting, which is going to trigger my follow-up question, which is again ICF compatible. There is always this question: how much do you push the client to reach the other side of their own perspective? Let's say. So with that said, let's continue with the coaching. Dear Jay, you said in the past you had the situation that a person kept you from getting a job because you said too much. Let's shorten it to that. With this current not client, let's call it.
Yeah.
What else could happen if you continue?
I think I would feel good that I could help this person who's obviously suffering a little, that I feel a kindred association with what he's going through. So I think the worst thing is that I would help him. Really. There's no negative about me helping him. I believe that.
Okay, good. So there is, from what I hear, on the one hand, the individual I could and I would like to help, but on the other hand, I don't want to risk being exposed to third parties in a way that you can't control, right? Okay, good. If we zoom out and have a look from above on the situation, and there is Jay, there is this person, there are all the other thoughts, that for some reason are visible to us now, or to you specifically. When you look at this picture, what do you see?
I see the risk of him being a little ostracized from those people.
Ostracized? Let me catch up. What does it mean?
In other words, he might be less credible associating with me from those other people. I saw us visually as two individuals standing well aside from that other group.
So he working with you would also trigger a loss of credibility, not just for you, but also for him.
Yes, that's
put it.
Yes.
Okay. And last question for now. What are you learning about yourself with all this information now?
I get a bit too emotionally connected to clients.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, I really would like to continue now, but I do have to come back to our session. Thank you, Jay. Thanks a lot for this small little insight in your life, and also for putting this up for us to have a look at it. Thanks. For the other people, what did you notice in my questions and in my not questions, like the questions I did not ask? Wait, which cup do I take? I take the blending cup.
Okay, ask the question again, please, Philip.
What did you notice now in this short little demo?
Well, first thing that came out to me is that you validated what he was going through. You said, okay, if I understand, it's such and such. Okay, so now you have this and you have that. So you confirm with him all along. That's what I know. And
yes, very strongly, yeah.
Think. Your questions were making him think. And when you think, usually knowing Jay, he's feeling. Because sponge, he feels everything.
Very good. Because that's the interesting part. If you notice NLP very, very specifically by the school, there is not much validation in there. NLP by itself does not work with validation. Not in the meta model, not in Milton, not in any of the patterns. If you have it by style because you choose to validate the other person because you are a decent human being, then it's good, but it's not part of NLP. So ICF blend also has something to add to NLP.
Yes.
Which is one of those things I would like to stress, that NLP is a very good tool, but the life of it is coming from the code of ethics, how you work with a person, and the core skills from ICF, where it is somewhat defines what is a good coaching in terms of acting with your counterpart. Anything else that you noticed with my questions?
What I've realized now is that you stayed well within the ICF framework, and the questions
with one exception.
We went out this, but you still got me to delve into my own perception of things and come up with a realization. And I was quite intrigued. That did that very well. Thank you.
Thanks. How did I do that? Just to make it transferable, because it's not some magic. It's just, how did I do that? Because
narrowing down the question. I'd call it chunking down in the question, getting down to the more detail.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I was using chunking down in specifying questions, but also I was using the meta model from a conversational point of view to zoom in on the specific things that Jay said. So that's the easy part where you can use ICF vanilla style, and directly introduce it into you can use NLP vanilla style and directly introduce it into the ICF work with a client. Yeah, Karina.
I have a question in the sense that, okay, if Jay was my client and I was to ask him, if you didn't announce to that particular person that you were coaching and you just had to talk with him, could that be a possibility?
From an NLP point of view, like I think the English term is coverted coaching, like not visible coaching. If you are at the bar and talk to the barkeeper and the person just gets rid of all the shit that the person heard from his or her clients, and you do basically coaching to help the person get rid of all the foreign thoughts, then yes, you can do it only in a seemingly in a conversation. If you want to do it or not is a different question, because that's an ethical question. In my beginning as a coach, I was really using each and every conversation to hone my skills in terms of finding good questions. Like I was listening to the people, I was listening for the meta model violations where they said something which was unclear to me, but seemingly triggered a physical response in their body. So something that was significant to them. There I asked questions, but I also kept it in a gray area, I would say, where I ask 1-2 questions and then I just stay the fuck out of it, because I'm not supposed to coach when the person is not asking me for. With ICF style coaching, you really have to have a coaching agreement at the very start of the conversation. So it's obvious we coach. There are certain rules. You are a healthy individual. You don't have any mental illnesses or diseases. You are working on yourself in a business context, maybe a little bit in a personal context, but mainly in the business context, because that's what coaching is, at least from a definition point of view. And so that's where ICF really zooms in. In my practice, I only coach, even if I do counseling. But this is also maybe something which is specific to Austria, where when I say I do counseling in Austria, people have a look like, okay, so I need to be somewhat cuckoo in order to have this conversation with you, right? It's not quite, but nearly the same level of you are wrong in your head when somebody goes to therapy. So going to therapy in Austria is just one up in terms of you are somewhat brain dead. It's really a very, very, very bad prejudice. I really don't like it. But in order to invite people who would like to have a counseling or a therapeutical conversation or a coaching conversation, I always use the lowest bar in terms of entry difficulty, and this is coaching for me. I hardly ever had a difficulty when I said, "Hey, I do coaching. Would you like to be coached by me?" Instead of when I said, "Okay, I do counseling. I can help you with a life problem." So from a sales point of view, maybe quite interesting. So yes, ICF style, it's very clear. You know exactly the lines, you know exactly the figure. You are very specific about what you do. NLP is somewhat more hidden, more flexible, but the lovely part comes up when you just put it together and you find the right place to follow up.
Now, Philip, when you mention a hidden thing, I want to point out something I noticed is when you're talking to Jay and suddenly your voice dropped down a tone. So I heard a clear, like, second tone with the question. I thought that was lovely. Not sure if it was deliberate or not.
Of course it was deliberate. There is another thing I observed. So I can't really say if it was deliberate, but I assume so, because over the years I developed a coaching mindset, a coaching state, a coaching position in my head. When I enter this state, I'm different than when I'm in a training state, and I'm different when I'm playing with my son and with his playthings. So all those states are somewhat different. And in my coaching tone, I usually drop down a little bit because for the conversational hypnosis in inductions, but also to having this nice late night DJ voice, as Chris Voss documented in his hostage negotiation process, which is also a very, very, very amazing book to use for coaching, actually, even if the background is a completely different one. So anyway, I would like to summarize a little bit before going to the next point. And I'll just give you the gist of it to speed up a little bit with the tools, because obviously NLP has a gazillion of tools. Risky NLP tools from the get-go are, for instance, anchoring, where the question of what is a good anchor, or when is an anchor sufficient? When do you actually anchor someone for something? This is something that an assessor of an audio cannot see or cannot gauge. So basically, if you hand in your recordings and you do anchoring, and the other person doesn't see the anchoring or doesn't hear the anchoring, it's quite likely that this is problematic. If you hand in a video, which I think is not possible at the moment, I would also rather refrain from it, because it's super difficult to see whether or not an anchor was efficient and if it was correctly applied on a video for an assessor who is used to listen to conversational style coaching. So just from a strategical point of view, I would omit anchoring for the credentialing. Same goes for all patterns that use some kind of metaphor. My questions to Jay were a lot of what questions, eliciting his mental metaphor for the situation with his client. So there was, from what I heard, and I would even expand further, because the first thing that I remembered from his conversation is he has somewhat of a conflict with a client because of his inner beliefs, but there is also like a third institution, an outside institution, where there is also conflict, but there is still within himself the second conflict that he would like to help the person. So conflict seems to be there as a strong metaphor. I could have zoomed in on this even further. This is something I received from him, so I could work with that. If I would go for, okay, so Jay, let's hop on a swish. Let's make the pattern in a way. Then first of all, he already smiles and shakes his head, obviously, because this is like, okay, what do I do with a swish here? It's not a pattern which is adjusted to the situation. So any kind of pattern with metaphors, where you have to use a specific process that requires visualization or imagination. Be very careful how you create this visualization, because it's so easy to impose content from you as a coach, whereas the content is supposedly coming from the other person. With a fast phobia cure, I would only say, imagine a cinema hall. Then my next question would be, how does your cinema hall look like? How does the screen look like? How do what do the chairs feel like? And so on and so forth. So these would be questions I would ask. And therefore co-create with my client the pattern. This would be okay. And another risky tools are the so beloved neurological layers from DILS. You know, the thing with you live in an environment, it is visible what kind of, so it can be a pyramid, or it can be a circle, it can be a wheel of a mill. So there are different kind of visualization that I know. But the gist of it, that all those layers somewhat interlink. And when you come from a visual point of view, it's the strongest layer with the heaviest beliefs and with the most integral beliefs that make up the person. Then there is the individual, which has not just as strong beliefs, but still formidable beliefs that create the individual of the person. Then are the values that are even weaker beliefs, but still can be very, 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 very strong. So you can see how varied already the strength of these beliefs can be. Then there is the abilities that the person have, which is also invisible, just like the values. And then only start the visible stuff with the behavior and the environment. So from those 6 layers, only 2 are visible, and abilities are only partly visible. This is a content imposition. A content imposition that you and your character is structured within those 6 layers. That's an important thing to remember. Actually, this neurological layers, it's a good model. I love it. So just to be clear here. But for ICF coaching style, I would be very careful when making it explicit. I would probably ask questions directed at those different layers, but I would probably not explain it. And normally in my coaching practice, I do explain a lot of the models that I use, for the simple reason that if the client likes you, you have about 20% effectiveness if you have a good rapport. If the client believes in the process, you have another, I think, 18% of efficiency already for free. And the third thing is a good discovery of the topic. I think that adds up for another 15%. So with these 3 components, you have over 50% efficiency. The rest is split up in, I think, 10 other things. So it's not so, it's still important, but it's not nothing that I would focus on. If you focus on good rapport, making the person believe in the process, which can be either by knowing the process or understanding the process or trusting the process, so 3 different things, and really clearly discovering what the issue is, you have already a credible strong efficiency in your coaching. All right, so that would be the be careful things. The good things that I suggest is mirroring, specifically verbally mirroring. If you repeat or paraphrase what your client said, that's a good form of mirroring, for the sense of having strong rapport, but also for being ICF compliant, because you use and you work with what the client supplies. That's great. Same goes for the meta model, and more specifically for the verbal package. If you're familiar with this application of the meta model, it's basically asking questions towards those things that are significant, visible on the physiological reaction of a person. If somebody says, well, I really don't believe I'm afraid, then this don't was physiologically very strongly connotated. So of course there is something. I don't know what there is, but my question might be, okay, so what do you mean when you say don't? And I just I just leave it at that, even if the question is somewhat unfinished, because I really want to trigger this physiological reaction, and I really want to trigger the person within this physiological reaction. So meta model, check. Milton model, check. It goes the same if you use what the client supplies. If you introduce your own metaphors, be careful. Then I would really frame it as a fantasy journey or a fantasy travel. Then it's probably also, again, okay. Slide of mouth, if you're into this model, is also perfectly fine, because you're actually using, again, what the other person says. Only be mindful of being lovingly caricaturing, being lovingly making fun of what the person says. So it's making fun together of the problem, not making fun of the person next to me.
Yes.
That's how I would use slide of mouth in a coaching environment. If you're familiar with the logical layers, which are not the neurological layers, but the logical layers, which is a way how a person structures content. For instance, animals, dogs, golden retriever. So I know if I say dachshund, it's not an animal, but it's a dog. And therefore it is also an animal. So there is a structure where I can specifically adjust the position of something. So this is the easy example, okay? You can also do it with tire, with chassis, as two parts of a car that is a vehicle, that is a mode of transportation. So we have different logical layers. The further up it goes, the more general it is. And then you have specific areas which are split in within the layer. So for instance, the tire is not a chassis, but both of them belong to the next layer, which is a car. Mm-hmm. So that's just a way of structuring thoughts, which everybody of us does, by the way. So this is nothing specific. Just understanding how you structure, for instance, your fear of spiders in comparison to fears in general, or to your well-being. See what I did there? How I switched to different layers. So if somebody says I have fear of spiders, and it's actually not fear of spiders, but fear of insects, even if it's not specifically correct, but never mind, then I would not use the spider fear. I would go up the level to the insect fear, because this might solve several issues at once. This you can use. Fair play.
I just want to throw in there, if I can, with neurological levels and the swish and all that other stuff, we're putting it to the side for now, but in the back of our mind, and that's what I love about NLP, and I suggest for people to study NLP first. When you study NLP first, we get a good understanding of logical levels. And we get a good understanding of neurological levels, where we have the identity, the values, beliefs, behavior. We get a good example of it. We practice a lot through our NLP practices. We can practice it in business. We can practice it with our family. And now in the coaching application, as Philipp said, we're not explicitly going to tell them a lot of these things. But in the back of our minds, in the back of our minds, we may have, that sounds like a belief, or that sounds like a value, that sounds more like an identity thing. And I love what Philipp's talking about here about going up one or two levels, because using the ICF coaching framework, we can navigate these levels up and down. And someone who has done ICF training and hasn't had NLP, the neurological levels are operating in the background, but outside of conscious awareness. And a lot of the times in ICF training, they don't really focus so much on rapport, calibration skills, mirroring, matching, So after NLP training, you're going to be so much better at ICF coaching. If you want to jump into that box, you'll be able to pull it off a lot better than anyone else, because, you've got a good understanding of it. Now it's just a matter of putting some of it to the side and focusing back to what Philipp is sharing here. I like your points, mate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very, very good point. I would also circle back to what Jay said a couple of minutes ago with ICF feeling a little bit restrictive. I would agree. I would totally agree. It is restrictive, but also with this restriction comes definition. And the beautiful thing about ICF style coaching is you can always coach. You don't need any knowledge about any kind of method. You don't need NLP. You don't need behavioral style coaching. You don't need hypnosis, whatever. You don't need it, because you just focus on the questions. We as a coach, we know it's not so easy to just focus on the right question. But anyway, what I would like to say here is ICF style coaching so heavily focuses on the other person that you never run out of good questions, because you just listen to the other person. And you don't have to have the bells and whistles that NLP provides. With this comes definition. With this comes some restriction, yes. And I would argue that in certain situations you need a bit more bang. If somebody has, for instance, a very deeply rooted belief and only questions, questions are only in the conscious awareness, and we need something to get out of the unconscious, for instance, then we need to switch gears. But that's where the ICF style is blended.
Sometimes you hit them with a question, and you will find this, especially in the practice, sometimes the questions are going around the place, but sometimes a question goes somewhere and it's like the client has something locked up. And if we get the questions around here, but sometimes we get the question here, and this block or locked up energy, and suddenly the coach is like, what's happening there? I don't know. And then it just kind of unfolds and opens organically. It's such a beautiful thing. When you see the ICF coaching with the NLP skilled operator, and when you see something suddenly just what this, what that, what, whoa, 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 whoa. And then suddenly client has an epiphany or a breakthrough. And you look so darn cool because you just said a few what questions.
True, yeah, true. Also, if you're unsure, ask more what questions. How questions are nice, but how questions focus away from the problem. And why questions focus the person to find a reason. But what questions let the person explore. So it's a different mindset. Also, what questions help you uncover the narrative that the person is having in their own mind. And with the narrative, you can work a lot. So if we put all of this together, the narrative, the logical layers and the neurological layers, then for instance, I as a father, identity level neurological layers, I as a father, I do have fear of dogs because of my child. I do have fear of dogs. It's nothing that I really would have as Philipp, who is having his own coaching practice, because I grew up with a dog. I was bitten by a dog, but never mind. I love dogs. I'm really a dog person. So if anybody who's seen me, I think Adrian saw me once playing in Bali with a dog on the beach. So I am a dog person. So probably at some point get a black nose. But anyway, as Philipp, who is a coach, no fear there in this different identity, in the same logical layer with fear of something, fear of dogs, one level down, nothing. When I walk in a foreign country as a traveler, different identity. Now I'm Philipp, not the coach, not the father. Well, in future I am. But if I would walk in a different country, or let's say I'm on a business trip and I take a walk on the evening and I'm in a foreign country and there a street dog approaches me, then this fear might come up again because I don't know the dog. I don't know if it's a healthy dog. I don't know what happens with the dog, and so on and so forth. I don't know if it's a chilled dog, which is probable, but it's nothing that I could, build upon. So their different identities can create different logical logical layer implications. With this in mind, you can be super incredibly effective in training if you just understand what kind of identities, maybe even what kind of beliefs are directing the person, on which level there is an issue arising for the person, and so on and so forth. All right, I have one last point I would really love to get in. Actually, two last points, but I'm afraid AI is going to wait for another time. Also because AI is like everybody talking AI, but I know to talk about AI, so I have to talk about AI too. No, I'm not going to talk about AI today. But what I would like to talk about is one of my observations from the International Coaching Week. So ICF is organizing the International Coaching Week each year, which is a great event. You can go to free webinars for a whole week. I think there are like 80 different webinars organized by different chapters, different time zones. Ooh, great topics. I really recommend. There a couple of I met a couple of really great people there. And I spent a lot of money afterwards because of being convinced of good coaching perspectives. But anyway, that's a different point. In this coaching week, in the International Coaching Week, one thing that I noticed was that there were a lot of MCC level coaches. And MCC and PCC, they're supposedly already great coaches. But in detail, PCC and MCC does not say much. And I say this with a lot of footnotes. So footnote number 1. There are people who can't coach, but still do coaching and hand in a conversational style recording and get passed. Then they go coaching. Then they have the badge as ACC, PCC, and wow, great. So those people not necessarily keep up the level of the badge that they actually got. So with this in mind, I watched about 8 different MCCs. So masterful coach, masterful. What's the abbreviation? Adrian, do you know it by heart? Master
certified coach and professional certified coach.
Yeah.
Now the difference, MCC used to be 5,000 hours as well. Used to be 5,000 hours for MCC and 2,500 for PCC, and those markers have come down a lot now. I think it's 2,500 hours for MCC.
Yes, and 500 for PCC. Exactly. Yeah, that's a huge difference. Yeah. Wow. Anyway.
It was a lot harder. It was a lot harder back in the day when I was a young fella.
Long ago, right? Anyway, so those 8 MCCs that I watched, they all of them made small little coaching demos, and there were a lot of mistakes from a NLP style coaching point of view, content impositions even from supposedly the best of the best. If you go to the ICF coaching database, there are about I think 35,000 currently registered credential holders that are also members of ICF. So there are more in total who are also not member of ICF, but members and credential holders, there are about 35,000. Out of those 35,000, there are only 2,500 that are MCC. So really, if you reach the MCC level, there are not many people on the whole globe on the same level. But still, not all of them are on the same level. But one thing that I noticed, and this was the same for all of them, was the way how they do the contracting. And contracting in terms of asking questions and then shutting the fuck up and waiting.
Boom! You made it here! Good on you. Make sure you click the subscribe button below and check out the playlist at the end. If you'd like to come along to our Sunday sessions where we host a live, free Q&A for our students and members, you're welcome. I'll see you there.